Hello, Detroit Sports Nation. Good afternoon. It is a snowy day. It is a beautiful day. And after what we just saw happen on our TV screens, we might have to name January 5th Cassius Winston Appreciation Day because what he just did against the Michigan Wolverines was really nothing short of brilliant. Michigan State led the game wire to wire, obviously meaning they never trailed if you were unsure. And the biggest part of that was Cassius Winston, who may have had the best game of his career. He had a career high in points, scored 32, and he had 9 assists, so he wasn't quite able to get that 30 and 10 game that as he was inching towards it. I really wanted, just because it'd be really cool, and it's something that, especially in a game like this, you would have seen him really put a stamp on the series, even though with 4 straight wins that Michigan State now has over Michigan in basketball, he's definitely put a stamp on the series in that way. I think this is probably a game now that Cassius Winston, and why it seems like he's turned up in these games the last 2 years, is probably a game that he takes really personal now, not only with it being the Michigan game and it's a rivalry game, and you always want to beat them, right? You always want to beat those guys. But going into last season, you heard a lot of talk about Cassius Winston not playing well against Xavier Simpson because he hadn't, but it had gotten to the point where it wasn't just, okay, he struggled against Michigan and he struggled against Xavier Simpson. It was Xavier Simpson is this somehow Cassius Winston stopper. And people say they would rather have, not everybody, not even the majority of the people, right? But there's enough people that I know, he obviously heard it, that, we're picking, we'd rather have Xavier Simpson over Cassius Winston. And I think you kind of got back in the lab a little bit, and then you really figured out how to be able to pick apart not only Simpson but Michigan in total on defense. And we've seen that the last 4 games were literally against Michigan. Every game he's been absolutely unstoppable. John says Winston constantly is pushing off defenders with his arm. Overrated. That's every point guard and every basketball player in the entire country. Winston does it. Simpson does it. Name literally anybody that you want. There's going to be point guards who are pushing off, who are creating space, who are doing all the little things that they can do. If you're an NBA fan, if you're concerned about pushing off defenders, you probably don't watch a whole lot of the NBA. But all the greats, Kobe, LeBron, Michael Jordan, whoever, right, those are always guys that are grabbing your arms when the ref's not looking and doing things like that to try and get an advantage. So, John, that sounds like it's a whole bunch of crybaby stuff over there. And I don't know if you're a Michigan fan, but that definitely sounds like something that a Michigan fan would be commenting, still calling Cassius Winston overrated, which is ridiculous. Yes, Dylan Baer on the Sports Carnage podcast as well. So it's a great day to be a Spartan, as he mentioned in our Facebook chat. Not only did they obviously get the huge win over Michigan, Cassius Winston played phenomenal, but you just had Kirk Cousins throw the game-winning touchdown in overtime to send the Vikings to the next round of the playoffs. Yeah, imagine thinking Winston is overrated, especially after this game, is crazy. Like, even the first there's some games this year where Winston didn't play well. And maybe you thought, overrated, just talked about as a player of the year candidate, whatever. But after this game, yeah, imagine thinking that Winston was overrated. 32 and 9, right on Michigan's head. Played in 38 of the 40 minutes too. So he was always out there because they need him to. As and Rocket Watts made a lot of threes late. But you don't really have a backup point guard on this team that you trust, right? You don't really trust Rocket to run the offense efficiently. And you don't trust Foster Loyer either, only because he's still so just small and tiny that when you get him against, especially like Big Ten competition, or you get into the tournament or whatever, and it's not that he's a guy who can't help you, because he can do some things on offense. He's a terrific shooter, but just defensively, he's a super big liability from there. And when you get into important games like this, you're probably going to see a lot of Cassius Winston playing 38, 39, probably sometimes even like the full 40 minutes. 30 points and assists. Hello, not overrated with the best point guard in the country. Yeah, good. So we got the team out here, the Cassius Winston defense team. In terms of the other big, the other big playmaker in the game was Xavier Tillman, who he was a beast defensively. He had 6 blocks and he was sending away. It seemed like almost everything that Michigan was sending up at the rim. And Tillman, me and Dylan, who you guys saw in the comment, who's on the Sports Carnage podcast as well, we were watching this game live and texting about it. And one of the things that we both kind of noticed about Tillman was how weird of a game it was for him. He did a lot of great things on offense, even in the first half. That's when he hit his 3-pointer, I think, on like the second play or the Michigan State second possession of the game. He was getting rebounds. He was doing good things on defense. He was swatting the ball away. But in terms of total effectiveness in the first half, he had some mind-boggling plays. He had 5 turnovers in the game, and it seemed like most of those were in the first half. He had a shot that he missed that he didn't follow up on the. He didn't follow his shot basically, and it was an easy board that I felt like he could have got, and then Michigan took it and they went the other way, and they probably missed because they didn't shoot well. And I think he just had some stupid fouls. So there are times times where we're texting where it's almost like, Tillman, absolutely, what are you doing? And you can't bench him because of how well he really played on offense. And that's another thing that I really liked from the game is Michigan State still turned the ball over too many times for, what you would like. They turned the ball over 13 times. But when they weren't turning the ball over, it seemed like their offense, was really kind of getting in a groove and in a sync. Maybe not so much in the later part of the game. Michigan cut it back down to single digits, and then it seemed like this weird couple-minute stretch where neither team necessarily could really hit a shot. But for the most part, Michigan State's offense did really well because it ran through Cassius Winston and Xavier Tillman. But in total, and I think in the second half, Tillman played better, even though he didn't have, he didn't get the majority of the stats there, if you will. But outside of a couple plays against, John Teskey, who is Michigan center, and he's a really good player. Tillman was great defensively, but Teskey's 7'2". So there are a couple times where, he's just able to kind of turn around in the post and just shoot over him. And, kind of what are you going to do about that? But to Tillman's credit and, really to the rest of the Spartans' credit, they were able to get Teskey in foul trouble. He eventually ended up fouling out. And the way that they did it was through their defensive screens and stuff. So it wasn't even a lot of fouls of hey, we're just going to take it to him at the rim and we're going to make him cause contact. And then, they're going to blow the whistle. It was running hard through those screens where then Teskey, he had to move, maybe got pushed off his spot or whatever, but he, leaning into a Spartan defender and things like that, where, you had a couple offensive fouls in there and you only get 5 in college. So even if you are able to draw 2 offensive fouls as the defensive team on one guy, then that's 40% of the fouls that he's allowed to use. And it's a guy who, of course, plays closer to the rim down on defense, just because he's so big. That's really where his strength lies. Other contributors for Michigan State, you didn't have a whole lot from other people in terms of bunch scoring, but you had 5 players. It looks like 4. So you had 4 players who scored at least 6 points outside of obviously Cassius Winston and Xavier Tillman. And that's really kind of all you need when you have 2 guys who are going, when you have 2 guys like Cassius and Xavier who are rolling so well. You only need a couple buckets here and there from a Gabe Brown, Aaron Henry. Marcus Bingham had a big 3-pointer. I know he missed the other one, but he had a big 3-pointer, and that's just a little plays. Arns, he didn't hit that 6-point mark that we just said, but he had a big 3, right in the corner off of what was it? I think it was off a Kithier pass. The play was weird. Kithier got it kind of close to the rim, but he kind of lost it, and then he batted it out, and then Arns was able to knock down a 3 in the corner. And those plays, even if Michigan State was up, say, like 10 points at the time, that takes that 10-point game to a 13-point game. And it's a really big play to just keep the momentum going and to make sure that you have a lead that's big enough to where then, you can sit Cassius Winston for literally a minute or 2 minutes and get him, just give him a rest. It's plays where then you can send Xavier Tillman to the bench, who played 36 minutes as opposed to Cassius's 38. So there's just those times and those little pockets where you're able to get your guys a breather and, you're still not wasting timeouts or anything like that. And then on the Michigan side of things, it was obviously Juwan Howard's first game against Tom Izzo as a coach. And Juwan got a little bit rattled. He had that technical foul after Michigan State hit like 2 3-pointers in a row, and then it kind of just seemed like the sky was falling. And those 2 3-pointers are really huge. I think it turned the game from 10 points to 16 points, or like 12 to 18, somewhere around there. But those 2 threes were huge because I think both teams only ended up with Michigan State ended up with 7 threes, but that's because Rocket Watts hit 2 in like the final minute of the game or something, where the game was out of hand. So kind of not counting those, at the time before that, each team only really had 5 3-pointers in the game. Michigan ended up with 5 of 23, and Michigan State was 7 of 15, but they were 5 of 13 for a really long time before Rocket ended up hitting those 2 at the end. And I say that to say, when you get 2 of essentially the 5 3-pointers that you really had in the game back to back, and then the other team isn't hitting threes and you're not hitting that many threes, it gives you that throwback of kind of like an older NBA game feel before they started, shooting 40, 50 3-pointers a night. And you had a 3-pointer that would really turn the tide of the game, because it just wasn't a shot, obviously, that was utilized, but when it was utilized and when it was hit, it was just like this huge momentum swing. And then so for Michigan State to get 2 back-to-back, neither team could buy a bucket from beyond the arc. That was absolutely critical in getting the fans back into it. And it's not shout out to the Izzone and everybody in that building today, because they really made it loud. And it obviously helps when Cassius Winston is rolling like he is. That's really who the fans rally around, because that's your best player, that's your point guard, and he's been here, his 4th year here now. Xavier Tillman, same kind of thing. Those are the 2 players who you lock in on, and they're the fan favorites. And they made it really tough, I think, for Michigan to get into a groove. I will say, though, I noticed that when they were doing their fake shot clock countdown, Michigan never fell for it, which is pretty impressive by then, because it usually seems like, you can get one of those a game where the Izzone's counting down 3, 2, 1, and there's 6 seconds left on the shot clock, and then the guy ends up throwing it up because he's scared about he's just scared about kind of time running out. And so, on the flip side to Cassius Winston, Xavier Simpson, absolutely not. He did not have a good game at all. And again, I said at the beginning of this video, I think it's a game that Cassius takes really personally, and we've kind of seen that. And this might have been, I don't remember all the games last year and exactly how Simpson performed, but I'd be hard pressed to just look at another game and think of one where he played worse against Michigan State. He is 6 of 18, and that's the one thing that with Xavier Simpson is always kind of bugged me a little bit. Is I understand that he is, I don't think he's Michigan's best player. That's probably Teskey, but he shoots a lot, and it's not that you shoot a lot and your guy like Carson Edwards for Purdue last year, who you're shooting a lot because you can score in buckets and buckets and buckets. Xavier Simpson is not that guy. And there was a game against Michigan State last year too, where he took the most shots and he's just not making them. And not that anybody on Michigan really could make a shot. They only shot 36% from the game, But Xavier Simpson, 6 of 18, kind of by far the most shots that anybody took on Michigan. Teskey did have 12, and he'd probably have more if he didn't end up fouling out. But Simpson also 8 assists, 1 of 6 from 3, 1 of 4 from the free throw line. And, obviously Cassius didn't drop 32 all on Simpson's head, but Simpson was Cassius's primary defender. And it's just something that Michigan State's been able to do a really good job of Cassius not only winning those one-on-one battles when they do happen, but running around screens and really running around the court in the game to, lose Simpson or tire him out or make it easier to beat him when you do get in those one-on-one situations. Because one thing that I thought was really smart that Michigan State is able to do, and maybe it's a luxury they have that Michigan doesn't, because they don't have anybody else that could possibly guard Cassius Winston, and of course not that Xavier Simpson can anymore, as we've seen the last couple of years. But Michigan State, they don't guard Xavier Simpson with Cassius Winston, right? Because he's a physical guy, and he's a thicker built guy. So it's not like he's big and he's some Ben Simmons 6'10" point guard type. But he's thick, he's strong, and he's somebody who can beat you up if you're the defender on defense. And they're putting Aaron Henry on him. I think I saw Rocket Watts on him too. Obviously, you're not going to put Fuss or Laird on him. It was an absolute mismatch. And then the one time that did happen, Simpson went right to the hole. But just for the game in general, 6 of 18, again, those 12 misses. There were so many missed layups that he had. And I don't think he's a very good player. And neither does Dylan. So when we were texting about it, it was like a missed layup counter, basically, that we were going on. And I mean, to his credit, after a couple of the missed layups and Michigan State got the rebound, he was able to poke the ball away right away. There was the one he had, I think, on like Gabe Brown, where he missed the layup. I think Gabe got the rebound, and then Simpson just like ripped the ball away from him, grown man style. So he did have a couple of nice plays, but overall, definitely not his best game. And, he hasn't had his best game against Cassius Winston in quite a while now, which you could really say that is where these games have been won and lost since Michigan State is now won 4 straight. It's really a battle of the point guards. And if you have Cassius Winston and the other team has Xavier Simpson, that is definitely something that you want to keep going, and you want to make sure that whoever is winning the point guard that matchup that day is going to win the game, because if you have Cassius and they have Xavier, you're going to like your chances 99 times out of 100. And as far as Michigan State goes moving forward, this game and really last game where they pummeled down Illinois, they're 4-0 now in the Big Ten. They can actually get a pretty nice-ish cushion, as really nice as you can get in the early part of the year, because other teams in the Big Ten have already lost. Ohio State, who looks like a really good team in general, they already have 2 Big Ten losses. Michigan, same type of thing, right? They started out the year really hot. They're still probably a good basketball team, and obviously today they didn't have Isaiah Livers, who is really like their best scorer. They have 2 Big Ten losses. Penn State's been impressive all year. They have a Big Ten loss, but you probably expect them to more or less fall off at some point. And then Maryland has 1 Big Ten loss, and that's a basketball team in a school that is legit. So if you can kind of have some more chaos below you, the fact that you're already 4-0 now, I don't know who Penn State plays next, but it wouldn't be shocking to me to see Penn State lose their next Big Ten game, right? And then they're at 2-2, kind of same thing with Maryland, where you're able to, because you've played consistent, the other teams below you just they're kind of cannibalizing each other and giving you a nice room at the top, as you're sitting in the throne chair watching everybody else get kind of swept away by the wayside. And for Michigan State, it does get easier than Michigan, but moving forward, there are some games that you would never call easy. And in the Big Ten, especially on the road, it seems like it's a notoriously hard conference for teams, even really good teams. Michigan State's, the Wisconsins in some of their years. A lot of those times, and even they have really good teams, Michigan too, they go on the road and then they end up losing to a team where you don't think that they should probably lose. But it's a hard conference to play in, definitely hard to play on the road. And Michigan State gets Minnesota next at home, and Minnesota is one of the worst teams in the Big Ten. So that you feel pretty confident about a win there. The only thing that you kind of might be a little bit scared about is like a letdown after, this big kind of emotional high win over Michigan. And then they go on the road at Purdue, where Purdue's not the best team right now, and they're not the best that they've been, but they're still a decent team. And it's at Purdue, which is never fun. You get home against Wisconsin, same thing, not the best Wisconsin team we've seen, but just the way that they've always kind of traditionally like to play. They can muddy it up with you and then take you out of their game. On the road at Indiana, and in Indiana again, well, they're 11-3. They already have 2 conference losses, but we saw a bad Indiana team last year beat Michigan State twice. So it kind of goes the saying is like, you have this next part of your schedule where you're not facing a ranked team, or at least any team that's ranked yet. If Indiana keeps winning, they might creep into the rankings later. But the next ranked game that you play, I'll say it like this so it's easier. You're playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You have 7 games against unranked opponents, and then you play Penn State at home in a month, basically on February 4th, and today's January 5th. So 7 games in a row against unranked teams, and just because they're not ranked doesn't mean you're going to win them all. But it gives you an idea of this might be kind of the lightest part of the Big Ten schedule. So the fact that you've already started out of the gate right now 4-0, if the teams below you keep losing and keep beating each other, because they do still have to play each other, then I think at the end of the year, you're not in a situation where you have to win on the last day of conference play to tie for the conference title or something like that. You could have a regular season title wrapped up pretty, early, definitely earlier than you kind of have before. But just, kind of pretty early in general. And then you don't have to worry about that. And you get that goal out of the way, and you get some bigger fish to fry. Let's check out some of the comments here, because I know I've just kind of been rambling and talking. Sorry about that, but I was very excited about the game, as I'm sure you can tell. David Nicholas said, get Teskey in foul trouble, and Michigan doesn't have a chance. Xavier is the only player that can make things happen. Yeah, and Xavier, you spelled it with the X. I'm assuming since you just talked about Michigan, you meant the Xavier Simpson, who starts with the Z. But yeah, you really hit the nail on the head right there. Teskey is, like I said, I think Teskey is Michigan's best player. And even some of the other guys that they have where they seem like they're going to be good, or you've seen games this year where, they've been fantastic. A guy like Franz Wagner, whoever. Franz Wagner, for example, he's had some games this year where he's looked really nice and kind of really comfortable. And then he's had other games where he's just been off. But even then, that's not a guy that's going to go out there and put up a 25-point, 8 assist type of game. He needs a lot of kind of catch and shoot opportunities, or where he's able to, like slash to the rim. And kind of to your point of, he's not somebody that's able to make things happen, right? That's still running through Xavier Simpson, even if he's not taking as many shots that night. And yeah, Teskey's a big part of what Michigan likes to do, because he can shoot a little bit. He's obviously super important defensively, because he is a mismatch for anybody. So when you throw it to him in the post, and you saw it against Michigan State today, and again when I was texting Dylan about the game, one of the things that I hated seeing was Teskey in the post, because he really ate in the post in the first half. And in the first half of the game anyway, Michigan dominated the inside largely because of John Teskey. And 7'2" mismatch for anybody on offense, and he's developed a really nice post game too. So it's not like a Roy Hibbert situation where you're just throwing it down to him, and then he just kind of has to get as close as he can to the basket and hope the ball goes in, or something that you've seen with, and Drummond's gotten better at it, but something that you see in the NBA where, again, like if you hope if Drummond gets the ball down there, or DeAndre Jordan is probably a better example. Yeah, they get the ball down there, and then the only thing that, DeAndre Jordan can really do is just dunk the ball. He's not giving you an array of post moves, but that is something that that Teske has, and he's able to use it to his advantage, obviously. And then just because he's so big and, he's so long, he's able to affect so many shots as they're coming down in the paint and, control the paint for most of the games that the Wolverines are in. But if he's not on the court, then you're replacing him with a guy, like Castleton, like Wagner, like Austin Davis, these guys who aren't nearly the players that Jon Teske are. So there's a good call by you, Nicholas. Philip Norris says round one goes to Tom Izzo and his players. Absolutely. Izzo, they were able to obviously get the first game against Juwan, and I don't necessarily think it was a really badly coached game, but I do think Juwan got rattled after those 2 threes, and then he had a tech, and he stormed up. I guess he stormed way too far on the court, and then the refs teed him up, and he was furious about something. And as far as the officiating, I thought for the most part it was a cleanly called game. In every game, there are a couple fouls, both ways, where it's like, oh, if you're a Michigan State fan, oh, I don't think that was a foul. Or if it benefits us, hey, we got away with one. I thought Xavier Tillman got away. So he got away with a couple of travels. The first one, it was pretty egregious, but it didn't matter because it got called for 3 seconds and Michigan got the ball anyway. The second one, he didn't get called for, and they gave him 2 foul shots, which obviously helped Michigan State out. And then the third one, I think he did end up getting called for. But there are a couple of times in the game, and that's kind of what we were saying about Xavier Tillman too in the first half, is he's just doing things like traveling and other kind of stupid basketball plays. And then, there's a lot of good. There's a 3 hit. There the rebounds, offensive rebounds, putbacks, throw it back in. And it's something that, you just kind of get mad at, but you don't want to see him off the court because everything he's doing is, you got a lot of good and a lot of bad. And then the second half, it was only good and none of the bad. And kind of to that, Andrew William, now I'm reading the comment, said very one-sided officiating. I didn't think so. I thought most of the calls were pretty even both ways. And, obviously there's calls on both teams that you think, should have been called that maybe weren't. Like, Cassius at the end of the first half driving to the basket, it seemed like he got pummeled and there was no call. And then on some of, Michigan shots, it seemed like, hey, that was a lot of contact for no foul. Yeah, and then here's Aaron kind of saying what I've been saying. Said, are you crybaby serious with the lopsided officiating, and are you seriously blaming injuries? MSU has been without Langford for basically 2 seasons now. You can have livers, they still lose to MSU by double digits in Ann Arbor. They might. I mean, this MSU team, it obviously depends on how they're playing, but they're playing really well right now. And Michigan State doesn't have a ton of tough tests before Michigan. So it's really just about staying healthy. The thing I will say in comparing the livers to the Langford injury is for Michigan State, it's more of just like an inconvenience at this point to not have Josh Langford on the team. But because they've been without him for so long and had, an entire offseason of practice where Josh Langford is not playing basketball, at this point, you've adjusted to life without Josh Langford. Like, there are things and there are nights where, hey, man, it'd be great to have another scorer out there. But the way they're running the offense now isn't necessarily designed to have Josh Langford in it, because if you did, that'd just be bad coaching because he's not here and he hasn't been here. Whereas with Isaiah Livers and him just going down, it's not comparable right now. And I said this on I don't know if we did a preview for this game or is after Michigan State's last game, is I think if you put him in a vacuum, Langford is a better player than Livers is, but Livers is a bigger loss because, one, obviously it's more recent, but 2, you do have that adjustment period to now where you are taking, maybe your best scorer off of the floor, and then it's a team that they don't have a lot of shot creators. Obviously you have Xavier Simpson. You have Jon Teske, who is good at finding different ways to kind of create his own shot. But there's not, if you're going to take a best scorer from a team away from a team that doesn't have a lot of scores in general, and they have guys who can shoot. So on any night, any of those guys can put up 25 points, if they get hot from deep or something. But they're not guys who are driving and kicking or creating, open lanes for teammates and things like that. Obviously, outside of Xavier Simpson, who really just runs that whole offense. But Livers at this point is a bigger loss than Langford. Evan says, "How about those Wolverines, though?" Shout out to Evan. Yeah, it was a bad game for Michigan. Couldn't hit really anything. And Evan likes wieners. He does. I've heard that before. Steven Izzo got in the game at the end, which was cool, and I like seeing just Steven Izzo getting the game is just funny. And then you saw how Michigan State reacted because they tried really hard to get him the ball, and I don't know who was guarding him for Michigan, but he was denying little Izzo the ball because he didn't want him to get it, and then it was at a point where he just had to run around and basically get a handoff to it, and then the crowd went crazy. And I wanted him to shoot that last shot, but if he had pulled it, I don't think there's a chance that he gets to see any of the floor ever again at Michigan State. I mean, Tom might even pull. I don't know. I think he is on scholarship somehow. Even though your dad's the coach, so you can just save up that scholarship, right? But at that point, I think Steven Izzo probably would have been kicked off the team if he spited his dad and threw up a 30-foot jumper at the end of regulation in a game that was 18 points by then. That's this is really what we have to say about the game. It was a game I was really excited for, and losing Livers took a little bit of the juice out of it. Michigan, as far as Michigan goes, and from that point, without Livers, I don't know how many people really expected Michigan to win. I know the spread opened at 9 points in the Michigan State victory, and then I saw today, it was just on Twitter, someone said the spread was 10. They might have just been rounding the 9 up, or the spread might have actually moved. But without Isaiah Livers, it's not like it was a game where I really thought Michigan was going to, win, and they didn't even cover. They didn't really keep it close. And Ray wants to know what's for dinner in the background. Hamburgers, Ray. Some delicious hamburgers that I'm about to throw into my mouth and watch. Well, right now we have the other basketball game on, but I'm going to change that to the football game. That's actually the reason this one started late, is because I was waiting for the Vikings and the Saints to finish their game, and they went into overtime. So I had kind of everything queued up, and then after Kirk Cousins, go green, go white, threw the ball to Kyle Rudolph, and Vikings won. Then we got to do this. But that is what we have. Before we do exit, the last thing I want to say is, obviously, as always, make sure you guys are following our Sports Carnage podcast. You can follow the page that's right there in the blue link description. Follow us on YouTube, Twitter, obviously Facebook right here. And just let us know, rate, subscribe, review. Of course, listen to the podcast so that you can see, what we have going on. Our next one that we drop is probably going to be the 9th, which is Thursday. That's usually how we work out. We try to drop every Thursday. The last 2 weeks we haven't because of the holidays. I think one Thursday was Christmas Day, and then so we record on Tuesdays. And one Tuesday, I think, was Christmas Eve, and then another Tuesday was, obviously New Year's Eve or something. So we decided not to do that because we all had families that we were, of course, getting to. But we are back. We're going to be recording Tuesday. Probably mention this game, the NFL playoffs, whatever you guys want us to talk about, we'll end up talking about. And then we'll also and then we'll drop it on Thursday. So subscribe, review, get the notifications, set up those alerts so that as soon as we talk, you guys can let us know. And then national championship game talk, obviously, with Clemson and let's see, who are they? Oh, because LSU. I don't know how I had a brain fart right there, but I haven't watched college football. I haven't watched any of the lesser bowl games since the playoff game started, and then the New Year's Day games. So I know Southern Miss played, some other bad team yesterday. And even though we picked those games, those aren't games that I necessarily are watching. It's more so basketball for me, and then obviously the NFL playoffs. But that's what we have. Thank you guys for joining me. I'm going to get to these burgers. I hope you guys have a delicious dinner tonight, and I hope you have a safe weekend and a better getting back to work week, Because I know the last few weeks you probably had some days off in there, and then now starting tomorrow, it's back to the normal everyday grind. But I wish you guys the best of luck, and hopefully those Christmas bonuses and tax returns give you all the wealth and money you desire. Have a good night. End video.